So we'll do it. All right, are we live? We're here in the studio. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the LinkedIn Live. We're not on Zoom. I've got Boris Ümarik here from the Productivity Club. How you doing, mate? Hello to everyone. So we've got this elaborate streaming setup from the office because we wanted to have a conversation about productivity, conversation about organizing yourself. Why isn't this taught? How can we do this? How can we educate ourselves? But Zoom, it's not so much fun. So we wanted to come into the studio, sit down. We are going to be in the chat afterwards. You can see we don't have pads here. So our colleagues will be in the chat while this is going on. And once this is done, we will get on the chat. So if you got questions, you want to talk to us, please do. And we will get back to you very shortly. But Boris, thank you very much for coming to the studio, mate.
Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I'm glad to be practicing digital minimalism with you here.
Oh, it is. That's right. Yeah. Because we don't need the Zoom. We want to make a real connection with people. Sit down. So we found the more technological solution to actually create less technology right here in front of us.
And more human connection. So I'm always for that.
Yeah. So we want to talk a little bit today about productivity, self-leadership, the skills that are at the core of the knowledge worker, which if you're on LinkedIn, you're probably a knowledge worker. But for some reason, they're not kind of agreed on or widely taught. How do you feel about that idea?
I feel frustrated. And I feel like we're stuck in time somewhere in the 80s or something with our work habits and the way society has looked at productivity is very that didn't age well, let's say like that. Needs adapting so our knowledge workers can actually focus on the things that are meaningful and not just plain movements that look like they're productive. But there's a problem around that.
Sure. I feel like the analogy is both that we are in the time before Henry Ford standardized the production line, where in that time when a factory is just doing whatever to do. But also on the other hand, we're stuck in a system that says, knowledge work has to be like the old system, which ironically was Henry Ford's factory line, which it's not. But we're stuck in some system. All right, before we get to that, Boris, you work for a company. You're a training facilitator for the Productivity Club, title-based consultancy, helping people to manage their time better, to understand these topics, to be a better knowledge worker. Tell us a little bit about your background and about the company.
Yeah, totally. So I'm in love with productivity and self-leadership. So let's start. But how did I end up here? I work right now in Tartu in this field. But around a couple of years ago, like 3 years ago, I was working in Tallinn here at this startup called Explore. And I was an engineer. And everything was going great. But as you can assume, with a startup, you're wearing tons of different hats, all different sorts of responsibilities. And in around the span of a year, I was taking on like 3 to 4 different roles and just like starting to feel really stressed and approaching burnout quite a few times. And I just realized that I was not showing up as well in my life as I wanted to. Like my results were starting to, crumble here and there. And I was not taking care of my health, my relationships, and I just realized I needed to change something. And I started looking into all of the different systems that I had built, starting from high school, the GTD, and I stumbled upon this guy called Nir Eyal. And what I learned from him really transformed my life. I realized that in order to live my life in all fields as well as I could, in work, in health and relationships, I needed to learn how to control my attention better. And then I went down this track of learning about this behavioral science principles of psychology of how our attention works and building out systems in order to lead myself better day to day and live according to my values and my goals. So setting priorities, making projects, and slowly things started to get better and better. And the startup field developed, and I built out the sales department, and everything just went great. And at some point, and also my sleep went better, my relationship got better, and I realized that this is something that really lights me up, to understand my psychology better, to also help others with this. I started helping my team, the closest people around me. And then around a year ago, I decided to actually make a transition and get into this field more and work with people. And so here I am now, working with Productivity Club. And we help people to lead themselves better and help ambitious teams to manage their time, energy, and attention better so that they can achieve their goals, whatever ambitious goals they have, and at the same time keep their health and relationships in check. So this is about me.
Good. So if you're following along there, he made mention of 2 authors and 2 particular books. Now, the second one was Nir Eyal. Nir Eyal. Nireyal. My Australian tongue, unfortunately, had a problem with this. And if I understood, that book was Indistractable. Is that right?
Yeah. The book is Indistractable.
And that was one of the books that influenced you. And you also spoke about the seminal Getting Things Done by David Allen. That is the book that changed me. 2006, I'm road tripping around Europe in an old Volvo we bought in Sweden. I don't even have a calendar. That level of, I'm that guy, right?
Yeah.
And I was driving around the Autobahns, listening to David Allen on audiobook, having to stop so I could make notes, like stopping on the side of the Autobahn, making notes, realizing, I need a calendar, tasks, projects. And now that's 18 years later, I want to say, or whatever it is. And I'm still every day working at it, every day trying. So if you want to go back and study some of the underlying things that we're talking about here, that's where we're going from. So coming back to you and what you do, you help companies. So productivity, let's say let's bring it back. We're knowledge workers, which means that we primarily don't swing a tool, hit a nail, we think.
Yeah.
We sit in maybe a computer, or it could be a bit of paper, or it could be a creative field. That's our value, is our thinking. And the greatest value that we can provide as a knowledge worker is our deep work, our deep thinking. But that's not quite what our systems are rigged up for. Many offices, you're there in your office right now, people are running around like crazy. Next job, help me with this. Fire's burning, bombs going off. And the people who are running around like mad are often, they're really busy, right? They're, when I've done so many things today. But the weird part is that as a knowledge worker, our value is not so much how many little fires I can put out today. It's how much deep thinking I can do. So first of all, what does that mean? How does that track with you? And what does personal productivity mean to you?
I think you laid the ground really well there. That's the goal of our day-to-day activities is to, create some value, produce some meaningful work. And the activities that we do day to day, if you count them up, they don't equal out as, being actually producing the meaningful work. So we need to understand what's necessary for us to do, to produce that great work. And generally that is doing less things, but doing the right things. And I think what that means is realizing or setting the clear priorities. What's the most important thing for me in this day, this week, this month, and then making the time for it. And then actually following through and measuring yourself. Like, did I do what I said I wanted to do? And not get distracted by this term that Cal Newport invented, which is pseudo-productivity, is, ticking off as many to-do lists, check boxes as possible, but being strategic about, choosing your most important projects and being able to set the boundaries when you are in the office and people are coming and you're getting a bunch of emails, to have the systems to actually allow yourself to take this time for deep work. So this is what we do also at Productivity Club, is that we help people to organize their like workspace, digital workspace, their actual physical workspace, how they organize their tasks, how they organize their projects and their thoughts. And next to that, how they build the culture around their workspace, which does it then allow yourself to take the time for deep work? Or are you always bombarded with tasks and requests? And so that's very important to actually have the time for deep thinking and to realize, what is it that I want to produce with my work? Is it activity or is it actually value?
So next, an author check, as we just mentioned there, Cal Newport. He is a very influential author on, he talks about time blocking, time management. So he's got a podcast. He's, the author of Deep Work.
The pioneer.
The pioneer in this field of saying, hey, I'm a knowledge worker. I should actually be I need to devote large blocks of time to thinking deeply about something. That's my true value. Slow Productivity is his latest book. So we're going to use a lot of that terminology as well. One of the other founding fathers of what we're talking. So that's Cal Newport. There's a lot to unpack with what you were talking about there. Okay. So if I spoke to any person who's watching right now, hey, do you know that you should be working on the highest priority thing? Duh, Louis. Like, again, these ideas are simple but not easy.
Absolutely.
So this is not a revolutionary idea that you need to be focusing on the highest priority thing, but how much can we actually say that we do it? And then my question, how do we even get to that? Hey, each day, knowledge worker, work on the highest priority. How do we even work out what the highest priority is? How do I defend my time and defend that priority list against the 100 other things that are going off in the office? And there's two directions, really good ones that you mentioned there. One, we'll go first into tasks and projects, and the other one was then tracking time, because that's actually, I've got serious about that in the last few weeks, and it's really changed how I'm working in the last few weeks, not only just time blocking, but accurate over time. So if we want to be more productive, I mean, we pull the thread on that. It comes back to tasks and projects. How do you view, I got things to do. How do I just at that really baseline ground floor level, how do I think about those? Let's say rather than organize, how do I think about tasks and projects?
So I think it's important to start that everything that's a task and every activity that you do that requires more than one task to do in a row and it has a goal that you want to achieve, then it's a project. So that's like one principle to adapt, that you might be a marketing leader, you might be a business, associate, you might be a lawyer, but you're also a project leader. You have a bunch of projects in your work that you want to progress upon. So it's important to realize that that's the case and have a system where you write out, what's the goal of this project? I need to assemble a table. I need to build a studio for my podcasting, and then lay out what are the necessary tasks around there. So you have a system that's not inside of your head. Again, David Allen, the legend, he said that your mind is not for storing ideas, it's for creating them. So that's like a base principle that I think we should all adapt. They will make life a lot easier if you just have a notebook or just a document on your computer, on your home screen, like random access memory. You'll just dump things in there. And then at the end of the day, you'll think about what you're going to do with that stuff. It might be just a request, an idea. I want to send someone a message or something. You'll have it there. So I think these are the two things that are kind of base level requirements.
All right, let's unpack that. So there was two, as you said, there was two parts there. There's dealing with what are tasks and projects, and then at a day-to-day, moment-to-moment level, how do I deal with all the things that are happening around? So tasks and projects, if I read back what you were saying, anything you have to do is a task. I got to do a thing. I've got a book. I've got to get the car fixed. No, that's a project. No, I've got anyway something I have to do. Right?
Yeah. It will start out in your in your
Yes.
inbox,
Right.
but then you'll go somewhere.
It's one step.
Yeah.
And better to start at a project. A project in this world of definition is anything you have to do that requires more than one step. So getting the car serviced is a project, but it's actually got multiple steps. One is book the time. Second is take the car down. It might just be two, but that in this world makes it a project. And usually you can pull the thread and realize now if it's just, I've got one thing to do, go down and get a coffee. Okay, done. I've got a coffee. And so project isn't your work project necessarily. That's how we define it, because we need to say, hey, there's multiple things I need to do. And a project also has a definite ending. It's not an ongoing thing. So marketing, look after the marketing this month isn't a project. We're trying to drill down into the specific tasks which are inside of projects that I need to do.
Yeah. I also think it's how you define the task is also important, and it needs to be a clear action step. It makes it a lot easier if you start thinking about it in this way. That's not just you write down in your calendar, car repair, but you realize that, okay, take the car on Monday to the car repair. And then the next step is, I don't know, pay the invoice the day after or something like that. So, yeah.
Okay, to get very specific about that, and we might even call that the next action. What is the next thing I need to do? Car repair, end state. Car is repaired successfully, sitting back in my driveway. First next action, book or call mechanics to set time. Okay, that's the direct next action that I need to take. Make that booking. The next one is going to be take car there at whatever agreed time is. Third action, retrieve car. After mechanic is done with it, puts it back in driveway, project done.
Just have a system for it where you write. It doesn't matter where it is. Can be on your notebook, can be on your, in your phone notes even. We use Notion. That's like our go-to because it's very flexible. But where do you host yours?
I use a collection of basically my own system. So because I'm a techie and I have a background in computer science, I install a lot of my own software, and I also don't like paying for subscriptions. So I host a lot of my own services at home. So I use a tool that's like Trello, a Kanban board that's like Trello to track my projects and high-level next actions, but it's self-hosted. I don't have to pay for Trello. I do pay for Remember the Milk, which does my tasks every day. Wherever possible. Like also, at a complete side note, I don't like paying for Spotify. So off my home server at home, I run my own homebrew Spotify that has an app on my phone and works exactly the same. And because I'm an old guy who doesn't listen to new music,
I want to look into that. Yeah,
So you got to run your own server at home with your own thing there. It runs the media server for the house as well. My girlfriend has the Netflix subscription, but I don't want to do that. So I just download episodes. So I'm that guy. I'm that likes rolling his own sort of thing. So tasks and projects, and this is hard, right? Like we just had to do this thinking to develop the 3 next steps for something as straightforward as getting the car repaired. That took thinking. 1 step, 2 step, 3 step. But most people, there's this resistance to wanting to do that. There's a resistance to wanting to take these steps. And it's odd. And I like that you brought up the system. You use Notion. I use some open source tool. You could, because there's a theory behind this and there's implementation. And what we were speaking about in the last few minutes is the theory that there's tasks and a project has 1 or more tasks in it. Now, how you track that is up to you. Whether it want to be in Notion, whether you want to put it on paper, whether you just, I guess you could just use notes on your phone, even if that. It's not super.
I've seen people do it.
If that helps you get through, but at least you're tracking. So this separation of the theory, I think we need to learn the theory So then, yes, because the next resistance that people come to is like, well, it's personal. The way I run myself, it's personal. You know, everyone works in a slightly different way. Everyone organizes themselves differently. So you can't tell us a productivity system. It's hard to have a one fit for all. And I was saying to you before quite passionately, I don't buy it. I don't buy that millions of people, millions of knowledge workers around the world all need to come up with their own system because it's personal. We're all doing knowledge work. We're all thinking. We all have tasks. That the personalization, it comes from understanding the theory, which I think is what Getting Things Done does very well. Tell me about tasks. Tell me about projects. Hey, I'm going to need this thing called a waiting for list to track who's coming. I'm going to need some time every week to sit and think about my projects to make sure I'm on track. Now, how you implement that bit, I'm cool with being personal.
Absolutely.
But the idea that we should just set knowledge workers off, it's personal, go work it out, that I don't buy for a moment.
Yeah, that's why we got to thank David Allen and people who have been, building it out. I mean, I agree that every company, at least a company, should have a way how to manage your projects, your tasks, and give the people the structure at least, and then people can adjust it to their preferences. But I think it should be norm.
How do you go about influencing your team to use this? So I'm going to focus again, just come back to projects and tasks, because it's the most simple baseline. It could be the most basic version of self-productivity, to understand your projects and understand your tasks. I don't even want to go into reminders or goals or long-term stuff. None of that. Just tasks and projects to keep the example super simple. I have struggled when I was the CEO of Comedy Estonia, using, first of all, leadership principles, but also producing these systems to help us manage tasks and projects. It's hard to get your colleagues to do this stuff. It's hard to tell them about it. First of all, how can I help to influence my colleagues to also take on these ideas?
Well, obviously they need a reason why to do it. If things are working just fine for them, they're not gonna want to do it. So mostly it comes after a pain point of like forgetting things, seeing that the deadlines are just not getting met, and start with the basic principles of let's not keep things in our head. Let's start to slowly organize things. And obviously leadership plays a big role, that you should be an example. You should show that how it is actually becoming more effective, and then inviting people to try. I think you can enforce it, but people will often go back to their old habits. And that's why I think it's important to have this personal element actually within it, because a person must be able to adapt it to his needs, because all these systems are just like a template that you must adapt. Otherwise, it will not work for you personally. So to leave this flexibility, and if necessary, to kind of dumb it down. Just have, okay, I'm putting things in my inbox and I'm putting things in my task list, and then slowly you can add more layers to it. But it helps if you do it with the collective together, and you have a clear leadership, you have your common agreements how you want to do things. You can't just tell one person, hey, you should do it like that.
Right. And when we practice leadership at Combat Ready, we teach and we preach and we live a very indirect approach. So I can't make anyone do anything else. The way that I instigate change in my organization is to do it. The only way I can do is lead by example. And I've done that. And I think it's sound advice, and I think it's the correct way to go. I think with something like personal productivity, though, because it's all about me organizing my own space, it's often hard to project that. It's hard to, I want to show rather than just tell people to do right. But because it's just me working my tasks and I've got a little notebook, it's not sometimes so clear to everyone else. And I've struggled with that, to how to demonstrate when it's mostly me thinking in my mind. I've had some success. I'm coaching a colleague right now in trying to get her tasks and projects together. And it's helped to express it to her. And then she's also discussing to the rest of the team, hey, this is helpful. So it's just really finding that one person who's receptive to the ideas and then helping them. But how does it work for you at the Productivity Club when a company, or is it people coming to you, or is it companies? And what is the driver or the trigger in an organization that makes them come to your group?
So we work with diverse groups. So we work with teams that are within a company, like a unit, for example, or we work with the whole company, or we work with individuals one by one. So we're in the team kind of structure. How we approach this is so it needs to be, the leader needs to be the one who actually calls it in that, hey, we're doing this. But then it's the personal responsibility of this person, of every team member, to actually follow through with it. And you asked why. What are the main reasons why people usually, or these teams usually, come to us? And generally it is that they come when they're exhausted, because there's just never enough time to do the things that are necessary to do. There's so many things to do, and everything seems important, so it's impossible to prioritize. And when they just lack this organization of their tasks, and they're doing things off, for example, of their mail, like an inbox.
So you got that inbox with 1,000 unread, and it seems unmanageable. Okay.
And then it's just obvious that these problems start to come up. Things get forgotten, or you can feel that in these one-on-ones within the team, the topic comes up, and then companies come in and ask us, help us sort this out. And this is what we help to do them with the organization of their tasks, GTD part. And then on the other side, if there is so much activity around that they just keep interrupting each other, or there is so much, the intensity of the work is such that it's impossible for them to actually take time and focus, then we help them build these agreements within the company. When and how do they actually take the time to focus, and how do they protect them that time so that they will be able to contribute to their biggest project, the most important project, according to their individual role. So we facilitate this discussion, and we help to set in place these agreements, and then also afterwards track if they're being kept or not, and to support them when the issues inevitably arise.
I like it. I like it a lot. And this is where what you do then starts to intersect with the leadership that Combat Ready teaches. So you're talking about, hey, we're overwhelmed. It's usually, look, we're worn out, we're overwhelmed. Everyone's got 1,000 unread messages. We are feeling like we're not hitting our priorities because I'm just dealing with the next Slack. I'm all the day in Slack. I'm taking the next message that's coming from the inbox. But then a feeling can happen like, well, I can change, I can do it, but doesn't change my team, doesn't change my organization. My boss is going to keep throwing every task at me. So what's the use?
Exactly.
Now, there's a few ways to look at that. One is, okay, well, hopefully if your boss is a little bit enlightened, then your boss is coming with you in this. The boss has seen that you're all overwhelmed, not quite sure, but understood something's got to change. So, okay, boss is there with you. We're all doing that. And you said making these agreements. And, okay, we're going to do this together. But then there can also be the case where, hey, management, they ain't changing. My boss ain't going to do this. And that's where the extreme ownership comes in from what Combat Ready teaches, that you are able to arrange yourself and control your environment more than you possibly think. Oh, my boss doesn't, he just throws everything at me and says everything is a priority. Okay, then it's on you to work out what the priority is then. It's on you to say, hey, I think these are the top 3 things I should be working on. And if the boss comes with you and says, yo, now you got to do this. Okay, boss, understood. Want to help you out. I've already got these ones. Should I now do these?
Or which ones should I do?
Or prioritize? Because I've only got so much time. So absolutely, that's harder. We're not saying that is easier at all. But we can also take ownership when our leadership isn't living up to the standards. It is possible to do these things as a solitary person living amongst the storm. We're not saying it's easy.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not. It's definitely easier if we all come together as a department, unit, as you said. But it's possible to do.
Absolutely. So. And we see it actually quite often. That we also have our individual e-course, which is self-paced. Back in the day, we were doing also these open trainings where anyone can come as an individual and then build out his personal productivity system throughout the day. And then they would go into their workspace and organize their work and be an example. And many of them later come back and they say like, hey, our team actually needs this as well, and let's bring it in. So I agree that you can be a great example. And what it means is that you take responsibility of your role, of your projects, your tasks, and then you showcase. You're like, hey, you come at a meeting, you show how you've organized your work, how you achieved your goals, and that's the way you can actually show that there is a difference how you do it, and you can be an example.
Talk to us about, let's go back down to the nitty gritty again. We went a little bit high with the philosophy there. Let's come back to the ground level. We were talking about tasks and projects. They're the fundamental building blocks of our day. I've got things to do. When the things are related, they call it a project, and a project has a definite ending. That's our working definition here. Now, you spoke about this inbox thing. We don't quite literally mean email inbox. What is the metaphor here of the inbox? What does that mean in a system?
So in Estonian, we say mõttekast. So that just means a box of thoughts. So it can be just a note, just a paper note. It can be a document on your computer. So that's a place where you put your ideas that just comes throughout the day. You're doing something and you had an idea. I want to do that. So instead of acting on it immediately, you're securing this idea in a safe space where you know you'll come back to. So that's a safe box that you can trust, that you'll come back to, and you'll review what's inside, and then you'll decide what to do with it. So it doesn't matter where it is again. It just matters that you have one place where you put that. Many people have, they have saved posts somewhere. They have notes on their phone. They have paper notes. So they're all kind of scattered. So you don't have an overview of it, and you rarely review what's in it. So it helps if you have this one space which you can trust.
Right. So we are writing down notes. Good idea. Maybe a lot of you already do. But if I took away from that, the important part is actually to come back to it later.
Yeah.
It's that I will actually look at that note later, which then also implies that they are somehow at least collected digitally or physically in the one spot. So yeah, if you love Post-it notes, write on. But then make sure that all those Post-it notes are together, not going around random place. And then 2, make sure that you are actually going through that stack of Post-it notes, end of the day, end of every 2 days. I don't know, maybe hopefully not too much longer than that.
And at least once a week.
At least once a week. Let's go with at least once a week. And then asking, what do I need to do with this thought? What does this thought mean? Is it a project? Is it a task? Is it something I need to put on my calendar? Or is it something I don't care about? Whatever. Now it's 1 week later and I realize that isn't relevant. Throw it out. But I need to then go back and think about, each of those things.
Yeah, the review part is critical. And I think that's a big place where people shoot themselves in the foot, or that they just disregard. Oftentimes we think that we just need the perfect app or a perfect new system that we'll just set it in place and it will work for us. But actually what we see is that it's the habits that matter the most. It's like, how do you organize yourself day to day? Do you put these thoughts in a certain place? Do you review them daily or weekly? And that's what matters in the end, is do you come back to it? Otherwise it will just stay and, rot.
Sure, because if you don't come back to it, then it will still be on your mind. The intent, the purpose of writing down this, whatever just comes to my brain, gotta get the doggy's nails clipped. Okay, write it down. Or I've got literally last night as I was walking home, I wrote down tick check. Oh, I gotta check the dog for ticks. So I went to the space in my phone where I wrote that down, and I just wrote down tick check. I know that will be reviewed. That will once a day, and that will inspire me tonight to remember to look over this little guy here to make sure if he's got any ticks. Because if I didn't go through my system regularly, I would know that. And I would know that I'm never going to see this note again. So it would still be rolling around in my big empty brain. And the idea is that if your inbox, you know that it's a system you'll come back to, then it gets out of the brain. Otherwise, it keeps rolling around, tick, tick, check the dog for chicks all the time. But if I trust that tomorrow it's going to pop up in my system, hey, remember you wrote that down yesterday, I can...
Yeah. You have all this freedom all of a sudden to think of different thoughts or just rest. Yeah. So that's a big thing that people come to us, is that they can't switch off after work. They go home and they keep thinking about stuff, or Friday rolls around and they're spending time with the family. And I used to do this as well. I would spend time with family, but I was thinking about projects at work, and this ritual of actually looking over what tasks I have, what projects I have, where they're at, what's the next step, and I can just close it and know that it will be safely there until I come back, and I don't need to worry about forgetting details. That allowed me to actually enjoy the rest and have an effective rest, so that I come back on Monday and feel refreshed and ready to go.
That the inbox is there. For me, it's just an app on my phone that I have, the task manager, Remember the Milk, and I just have a daily task that I write like bits in there, right? And that does mean on a day-to-day basis, my to-do today list gets pretty unwieldy, right? But I also am in the habit of cleaning that up every day, and then I'll just throw all sorts of stuff. Like I'll just write tick check today. And that pretty quickly fills up my today list. It gets a bit overwhelming. But I also know that I check it every day, and I'll go through and clean that up every day, and then take it off, put it somewhere else, reassign it or something like that. So that you're writing your thoughts down in the phone on a bit of paper, and that you trust that you will go back and review it again not too long in the future.
So you won't regret forgetting it.
Yeah. I try to use the mental trigger that if I've thought of it twice, that means I should be writing it down. So that's a hard one to mentally trigger yourself to. But if it's coming back up again, I've got to write that report for the partners. And if that comes back to me, I thought of that a second time. That's a little trigger that I can use. And I wouldn't say that habit has come easily, but to be really conscious about myself. I just got to write that down. I got to write that down, which means I'll, in a day or two, look at that later, and then I'll decide what do I have to do with that report. But if it's written down, it means that my brain doesn't need to keep bringing it to the surface, because my brain knows. So we've got tasks, we've got projects, then we've got this inbox. We just write down whatever the hell comes to the mind, and we leave it there. Now, you spoke about there's some time to look at that again.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to, at the end of this, present a pretty straightforward way. So there's like time for me to look at that, but it's also important to spend a time every week reviewing the whole thing, not just processing my inbox. There's like time to process my inbox, tick check, where do I do that? Project, where does that live? How do I store that? But then there's some review time, the weekly review. How do you view this?
So I start with my previous week. What actually happened? I have a couple of questions that I ask myself every week. And I think that's the one habit that has helped me the most in personal growth and, business, like in the whole, is to be able to review my goals, my projects, and my tasks on a weekly basis. And first celebrate if something went great, any achievements, then ask what didn't go well, and see where did I not show up as well. So, and you probably heard of also essentialism. There's this.
I think I've heard. I haven't read it, but I think I've heard of the context. But go ahead, tell us about it.
There's a story about figuring out where did you basically stop yourself from progressing the most, and he has this great analogy that I think it was Greg McKeown was his name. He went on a hike with a bunch of school kids, and there was there's scout boys, and there was one boy who was particularly slow. So his role was to manage the whole group and see that everyone's safe. But the first couple of guys just kept going out ahead of time, ahead of the group, and he couldn't have an overview of them. So he needed to stop them and then look back and see, wait for the slowest kid. So at some point he realized that it's not effective because they're just not arriving to the place as quickly as it could be because they keep on waiting for the slowest kid. So he realized that if he could just help the slowest kid get up to speed and help him go faster, then the whole group would arrive faster. Okay. So then he helped the kid with his luggage. He took out the Scout boys' things from his backpack and shared it across the other kids. Okay. And as a whole group, they started moving in the same space, and they arrived in the same pace, and they arrived much quicker. So I heard that story, and that really resonated with me. And the reason I'm sharing this story is because every week I ask myself, what was the slowest hiker in my day-to-day life, in my tasks? What created the most friction that I could fix or I could improve that would then make everything else easier? So that identifies what's keeping me back. Is it I'm not, taking time for deep work, or I am having too many tasks during the day? So that's overview of the tasks themselves, of the calendar. And then I try to ask myself, if I'm looking at the calendars, did I do what I said I wanted to do? Not that how many tasks I completed, but did I keep my word to myself that, hey, I wanted to finish this objective. I wanted to focus on these projects during that time. So that's where time blocking comes in, and actually being intentional about your time and focusing. So once I've answered that, then I set the priorities for next week. What's the most important project? How do I want to measurably progress in that? And when am I going to actually do it during the week? And then the week comes around, and I need to be able to protect it, because I know that at the end of my week, I'll review it and ask myself, did I follow through or not? So that's the routine, how I go about it.
There's so much good stuff in there to unpack. The big picture that I take away from this is you have, for your weekly review, you have a standard operating procedure. In Combat Ready, we call that an SOP. And we're trying to make standard operating procedures out of as much as possible. If I have to do it more than once, I want to write it down so I don't have to rethink of it a third time. And that's a standard procedure for how you do that weekly review. I think about this, I think about that, I write some thoughts down, I analyze the previous goals, I come up with the new ones. So it's not just like, yeah, I got it, what do I do? Oh, I think about a bit about the last week. There are these definite steps that I'm doing in this time, and they can change. The procedure can change. My procedure changes all the time as to what different things to focus on. But the point is that you've got, these are the 5 things or the 3 things that I do and I think about every week in that hour or 2 hours that I set aside. You spoke of looking for the largest friction point, and that's a trigger for you to think back over your last week and think, what was the hardest? What was the most difficult? What did I struggle with? What did I completely ignore? Why did I completely ignore it? Is there some in that? I have noticed inside of myself that there's a connection between the hardest thing I have to do and the most important thing I have to do. There seems to be a weird connection. The thing that's hard, or friction, you use the term, the thing that has the most friction to me wanting to do it is very often the thing that I should be doing. So I guess that means it's important and it's hard.
Yeah.
If something was important and easy, I probably would have already done it.
Yeah.
That's pretty straightforward. Yeah, okay. The most important thing for me today is to eat ice cream. Right on. Did it. Got it handled. Most important thing for me today is to think through our company strategy and come up with 5 ideas about how we can get out of this hole. Oh, much harder. Don't think I want to sit down and have that mental pain of thinking through that idea, so I don't. It's the same way that you think back to what is the hard thing. I've started, if I'm resisting it, it's often a cue to me that I've got to do it if I'm putting it off.
Yeah. I think you're onto something big there, because the kind of highest value projects or tasks that we need to do, often they require the most this boldness or courage from us, because it just feels uncomfortable and scary, because we're kind of putting ourselves out there. And yeah, that's a good trigger to have. If something seems uncomfortable and scary, have a light bulb goes up, and you know that it is the thing that I need to focus on, and I'll put it on my calendar to get it done.
It doesn't mean it gets done. Doesn't mean, like now, I don't mean to make it out like that's a catch-all.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, okay, I worked out. No, it's still hard. At some point, we can do all the triggers I want. Louis, remind you, that's the hard thing. You should be doing that. All the scheduling I want, all that. At the end of the day, it still comes down to I need to have the discipline to do it. Now I can maybe I can make a better environment. I can religiously block off those hours. I can, I don't know, set myself up in a nice space. I can make sure I've just had a hot coffee that gives me a little perk up that helps me. I can do all those things. Yeah. Eventually it comes down to, I'm just going to friggin' do it.
Do the work.
Yo. And that's in Combat Ready, what we teach, discipline equals freedom. That you, at the end of the day, you're going to have to do it. We say one of the mindsets that we teach is discipline equals freedom, which means that if I want freedoms in life, I've got to put the work in up front. If I want financial freedom in my life, I need to have financial discipline today to not spend on crap, to save money, and so forth. If I want to have the freedom of a job that is exactly to my liking and fits my lifestyle, I've got to put in that work today to get there. At some point, if I want to achieve my goals at work, I'm going to have to, like you're saying, actually sit down and do that really uncomfortable task. So there's a lot there. I mean, there's even more. You keep pulling the thread on these things. It goes, the rabbit hole is so deep. How do I get the discipline? Okay, can I tie it into goals? All of a sudden I've talked about, I want the financial freedom. I want the job. Well, that's a goal. That's a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year. I didn't want to get us too far into the rabbit hole of goal setting today. I mean, because that's the whole thing. I wanted to sort of keep us at what are the practical steps that we can look at right now? Tasks, projects, the weekly review. So what do we take away from the weekly review? We've got to have that time, And it's really good to have a standard operating procedure of the things that you do in that time. Do you have a time every week, or how do you find that weekly review?
I used to do it on Sunday at in the morning, but then I realized that it's good to do there, but it can get a bit, if you go deep in it and you start kind of adjusting your system as well. Now I do it on Fridays in the afternoon, and then I look over it again on Sunday, and then I kind of come back to it in a bit more clear head. So yeah, I think it's good to do it also on Friday, because then you can actually freshly pack things together, what happened, and you have this amazing feeling going into the weekend, knowing that you have a plan and you crushed it this week, or you learned your mistakes, you know what to do differently. So that's where the real growth comes in. So I think this standard operating procedure is just vital for growth. So that's,
it sparks my idea about how to, so then we can ask ourselves, what should this procedure be? And no doubt you can Google, you can get information from Boris about some of the things you could do. One area you can start in when looking at the weekly review is use the debrief structure. That's another technique that we teach at Combat Ready. And the debrief structure comes straight from a military debrief. And you basically ask 3 questions. What went well? What did not go well? And what I will do to improve.
Exactly.
And you can take a debrief about a meeting. Hey, me and my colleagues, we just had a meeting. We just did something. We just finished the day of work, and we can do a debrief. Hey, everyone will say what went well. People could say what they didn't do well, and then they could say what they'll improve in the future. But you can ask that of yourself. Even that simple one, what went well last week? What didn't go well last week? Okay. What am I going to do to ensure that next week I improve on the things that didn't go well?
Absolutely. And if you really want to become a pro and just progress a lot faster, you can do that on a daily basis. Just finish your day like that. It doesn't need to be long, like 10, 15 minutes. Look over your tasks, see what went well, what didn't go well, what do you want to do differently, and select the scariest thing that you want to do tomorrow and put it on your calendar.
I like that. Yeah, the daily shutdown, even, you might even say. Could this become a ritual that you do at the end of the day to help you unwind, turn off, relax?
I call it the reset ritual.
Ooh, I like that.
You reset your day and you put things in place.
We're ready to go home. I move my weekly review time a bit. I keep my weekends almost religiously free. For better or for worse, I really don't like working on the weekends. Maybe if I'm in the mood, I might get into something on a Sunday afternoon, but I let that happen super organically, which means I'm left with Monday morning. And I know a lot of people don't like Monday morning. That Monday morning is the time for go, right on, and that's fine. Our company meetings used to be at 9 a.m., so I would use 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. to prep myself before the day is really wound up to go over things, and then be ready at 9 a.m. for our team meeting. They now moved our meeting to 8 a.m., which is, I'm going to have to, it's fine. And then I would also schedule another hour on a Wednesday morning. So Monday can be a little bit frantic, can be a little bit pulling it together. I might take a cursory view over everything I'm doing, making sure that I got the things. And then even Wednesday is a time where I could maybe even take a deeper look specifically and think a little longer about projects. Look, that split system seemed to work for me. It was just something I'm experimenting with. Do it with however you do. I'm glad Friday's good for you. For some people, it can be exhausting.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it can also be the most valuable time because it's fresh in your brain. We want to do a debrief, hopefully as quickly as possible. You think about if you go to a meeting with you and your colleagues, and we want to do a little debrief so we can take away lessons learned. The most valuable time to do that is straight out after you walk out of the meeting with the client. 2 days later, we know. So I appreciate why a Friday can also be a very valuable time to capture that.
Yeah, and at the same time, it only matters if you are able to do it then. Because if you're not, then the system doesn't work. So it also is part of what you preach, that the plan needs to be simple. Simple enough that you actually follow it. So anything that works for you, can be Monday, can be Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, that allows you to, be there with a clear mind and do it. And also the questions that you run through can't get too long. It needs to be simple so that you are actually doing it. Otherwise, you'll start neglecting it, and then a couple of weeks later, you've forgotten it.
Yeah, what are some of the challenges when you see the customers, your clients that you're dealing with? What are the barriers that are stopping them doing? I mean, we talked about project tasks, inbox, and weekly review.
Yep.
So we could pick, let's just say weekly review right now. This time, what are some of the barriers that are stopping people doing this?
I would say that, as I mentioned earlier, it's all of these behaviors or these systems, in the end, they are habits. And if you're able to bring this habit in your day-to-day life, you succeed. If you don't, you don't succeed. So how do you help yourself to follow through with that is a lot with how serious you take it. And how serious you take it depends on, is there anyone else invested also in your success? I think that's one thing that's kind of many people don't focus on. That is, are you doing it totally alone, or does someone else know as well that this is your goal? Because it can get quite lonely sitting there on your Sunday and thinking about the systems. So accountability, group accountability helps a lot. So I think this is something that people don't do. They try to do it on their own, and then they skip it here and there, and then it just derails. So you can use accountability buddies. You can have a system with your colleagues that you have a clear meeting, or you have a stand-up where you debrief these things. So don't do it alone is a big place where you can help yourself.
Makes sense. Actually, bringing together a few of the ideas that we just talked about, I remembered there's a guy I got to speak to about weekly reviews. And this comes back to I've had this thought twice, which is the cue that I need to write it down. And I've got email and the guy here. Because I was working with a customer last week. We were dealing with a team from Pipedrive, and the leader of that team mentioned to us that he's trying GTD. And so, that immediately piques up my interest. And he said he was struggling with the weekly review, and he spoke that, he's just got to do it. He's just got to schedule it in. And the thought that kept coming to my mind is, hey, I want to schedule a coffee with him. Can I offer support? Can I maybe be that accountability partner? Can I be that guy that he bounces ideas from? And also good for me too, because I said the more I do it, the more I wouldn't call myself the expert after 18 years. The more it's just more like battling each day, going down the path rather than arriving at a destination of being the Zen master. So I've got the note here to remind myself, email that guy, offer, hey, you want to have a coffee or something like that to bounce ideas off. Accountability partner, some help to not feel like we're on our own, trying to implement these ideas when we're in the middle of the storm.
Yeah, there's so much things to do. So how do you even take time to think?
Yeah.
But that's critical. That's critical, especially for leaders, to take time to think things through.
Taking time to think, yeah. My boss, Remo Ojasta, so he's a former member of Estonian Special Forces, and the highest, most elite level of soldier that Estonia produces. And he uses the analogy that when you're in the military, there's wartime and there's peacetime. And when we're at peacetime, we are training, we're practicing, we're getting better at our skill, we're rehearsing, making sure we're ready. And then it's wartime, it's ready to go. Bam, we're in the war, it's intense. That training, we're still learning, we're still growing, but there's distinct differences. But when we're a knowledge worker, there is only wartime. There is no peacetime. Now, in wartime, you might still get training. Sure, it's wartime, but actually we're going to pull you back from the front lines for a week to do advanced training on some new weapon system or tactic or something like that. But it's still the wartime. when you're a knowledge worker, it's always wartime. You've never just gone away for 6 months to get better at your stuff, and left the job, right? Yes, you can take a sabbatical, but how many people do you know are actually, because that also has a reflection on your income. So the training that we do is always this wartime training. It's like being a basketball team that never get a break. What if the basketball team game just went forever and we had to somehow just get better at basketball when we're always playing basketball? These are the difficulties. How can I take time out in wartime? How can I give myself wartime training because it's always coming at me, unfortunately?
Yeah.
I like those analogies. That's what Combat Ready gives
me
me,
too.
even though I've never done this, never been in that. That analogy has helped me a lot to understand.
I think seasonality is something that we need to adapt. And that's something that Cal Newport writes about very much, is that we're not made to be working in wartime all the time.
Sure.
The nature that we have grown out of, we're part of, does not, it's not it's not summer all the time. We keep, pushing and glooming, but we need to take this slower times throughout the year, throughout the season, like the quarter, and also a month, that we know that there's some time when we kind of look over our systems and it's assumed that we can take that time, or we at least we make it important for ourselves. Oftentimes it's the summertime for business to look things through. To think about what's the seasonality that you can introduce to your life. Is it, even once a week, on weekends, that's the season of short break. Once a month, once a quarter, you have like a couple of weeks that you take pause from different projects before you start new ones. That's the time where you can sharpen your tools.
I like that. I thought, I remember back to when we had COVID, and COVID affected us all greatly, of course, really affected Comedy Estonia because we literally can't do our job. Our job is to perform in front of live groups of people. And yes, we can adapt to podcasts. Yes, we can adapt to other recorded, transmitted media, but really, all we really want to do is be in front of a group of people. And there was that time when we didn't know the pandemic was going to end. When's the government going to change the rules and let us back out of our houses again? And I knew that what I wanted was for us to be ready. So when the government changes their mind, bam, we're ready to go. I knew it would be good for our artists because they're raring to go. I knew that we would capture the market because everyone else would be slower and we would be straight out of the gate. Everyone would be coming to a Comedy Estonia show, and all the other whatever entertainments would be slower we would have that market for a couple of months. But we didn't know when. And I had us for a while. I would say I had us standing at red alert because I'm like, we're good to go. We're ready to go. But then the government dragged it on and on and on. And we were standing at red alert for some time. And I eventually understood I can't keep a team standing at red alert for so long. Little bit of seasonality of this idea that I had to back us off. Okay, who knows? The government could still change it today. I don't know. But I had to back us off to yellow alert to bring us down a few notches. Let's chill out for a bit, because otherwise I'll burn them out apparently in peacetime if we're all set up and ready to go for this.
Yep.
This idea of seasonality, that let's even say broader than a week, that our year goes up and down. Some months are slower, some months are faster. I understood this as an artist because we have the high season, the low season. Summer's very busy. Winter's different, a different way. We have slow months. So I kind of learnt to ride that. But I know what you're talking about. The Cal Newport talks about this because he's a professor. He's a university professor. They have a clear yearly schedule. A lot of knowledge workers don't have a clear yearly schedule. And I think I think there's a difference here between American and European, particularly Northern European cultures. I think when Cal Newport talks about it, they're Americans and they just sort of have, yes, they have seasons. I'm not saying Americans don't have seasons, but coming as a Westerner, it's much more just like always on. It's just, yes, now it's rainy, now it's snowy, now it's summer. And yes, there's up and down, but it's just more, I remember working in a Western environment in Australia, and it's just much more consistent. And what hit me about Northern Europe particularly is it's much more about the seasons. Yes, the winter is slower. Well, the summer is 100%. We just don't have a concept in Western culture of a Northern European summer and what it means for slowdown, even knowledge workers. Even if I'm working in an office, it doesn't really change anything. The way the whole society shifts a gear, Western culture doesn't have that. So I think that it's inherently easier. That's my theory that I'm proposing here. Inherently easier for Europeans and Northern Europeans to understand this shift of season because we already really, you're slower in summer. It's just accepted.
Yeah, or faster.
Or faster, yeah, whatever. There's some degree, right? Okay,
Yeah.
maybe you can maneuver faster because everyone's on a break, right?
Yeah. Well, I think you're right. I mean, if you have the natural seasons that are pushing you to take it slower, then you'll notice it more and maybe you'll be pushed to do it more. But I think it's also important to realize that winter time is, at least physically for myself, every winter I feel like, okay, I need to sleep more. I need to take time for thinking. And I'm already preparing like in November. I'm like, okay, I'm planning my next year, taking things a bit slower so that when this year starts, then I could go with a bang, like just around spring. So yeah, these seasons, yeah, they're there.
There's something to consider, I think. And there's something probably as Estonians and Northern Europeans, we already do. So it's just to be conscious of how that works. Absolutely. The winter gets me as well. Every year I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing in this place? And then what am I doing in this place? And then I remember all the free healthcare that my forthcoming children are going to get. I remember, yeah, all right. That's probably a pretty good reason. You're paying for Estonians. Okay, Estonian government. You're paying us to make little Estonians. I will put up with the weather. So yeah, there's a lot there. The kind of 4 tenets we've identified today: projects, tasks, inbox,
and time
boxing, weekly
boxing.
Review.
Yeah.
That this time for reflecting,
Yeah.
it's really important because if we don't stop, if we don't carve out. So the analogy, may bring it back to the wartime, peacetime. How can you make a timeout in the basketball game that never ends, which is your knowledge work? You can at least make a timeout.
Yeah, and how do you expect your teammates to perform if they just keep on playing day after day, they never take a break, they just keep getting distracted, people shouting at them, asking things, they're not gonna be at their best. So they need to take time to review, to set their sights and recover.
Right.
But I think we didn't talk about time boxing yet.
No, we didn't.
You're a big fan.
Yeah, we could go a bit. We appreciate. We thank you very much for watching. As I said, we'll be in the chat afterwards to answer your questions. We don't want to take too much of the time, but let's go to that. Time boxing, time blocking, whatever you might call it, being intentional about how you use your day. So again, this is a little bit more work, but it's looking at my day, asking myself, what are the important things that I need to get done? And then writing out and going, yo, from 10 to 11, I'm going to write that report.
Yeah.
I have to work on a part of my keynote presentation for Combat Ready. It's in the schedule. I have to do that from 3 to 4 this afternoon. Now, my day could evolve, and that's fine. I'm not like, yo, come for a coffee because I got to absolutely do it. But the point is, I make a plan. At Combat Ready, we say the plan is worthless, but the planning is everything.
Inevitable.
The plan will change. That's fine. We're going to innovate and adapt, but I will at least have a plan for the day. I'm going to have my plan for how I'm going to spend the hours. Then in the next column, I'm going to have how it actually all fell out at the end of the day, which is coming back to your point about reviewing, looking back. I look back. I have papers. I'm Mr. Digital, Mr. Open Source, GitHub, online, self-hosting, Docker. I love it. But I still write my hours out in a bit of paper. You choose how you want it. I can review those papers at the end of the week, and go, here's how I thought I was spending that day. Here's how the day actually went. Do I need to control my day more? Or am I just setting unrealistic plans? I'm going to spend 5 hours on that. Do I need to be just more, there's that balance to find in the middle when I'm planning idealism versus pragmatism in how I'm planning a day. How do you look at a day, or how do you approach a morning?
Yeah, time boxing, I think, is very critical. It's oftentimes very difficult for people to start and wrap their heads around, wait, do I need to plan everything in my calendar? Like, taking kids to the school or anything, like just little things. No, it doesn't mean that you need to start, putting every task on your calendar, but it does mean that if you want to be intentional and, make sure that it does happen, you put it there. And why is that? Is because if you look at a to-do list, that's your general approach. How many of you have a to-do list done for today? You'll notice that it's mostly just a list of outputs that you want to get done, but you don't think about the inputs that are necessary for that thing to come. So it's critical to realize that if you want to see a clear result or an output, you also need to think about the input that you need to put there. So you can't, if you're making a cake, if you start making a cake, you don't sit down and be like, okay, make cake, that's it. You think about, okay, I need the ingredients. I need some flour, I need some water, some eggs. Okay, and then I need around an hour to put it all together and then put it in an oven. So that's the same way how I try to approach my day, is that I think through what are the tasks, the most important tasks that I need to do, that are critical pieces that must get done today. What's the input that is your time and attention? How much do I need to put in there to get the results? And when am I going to do that? And what that does is you will start realizing that if you actually do that for an hour without getting distracted, you become a lot better at planning. Because if you just do the things throughout the day here and there, you don't know, is it 1 hour or 5 hours? How much it takes to get done. So time boxing is critical if you want to, you want to secure the task and make the maximum out of it. And what matters at the end of the day is not how many tasks you've done, but if you did the most important thing throughout the day. So then you know exactly when you do it and if you focused on that thing or not. Because if your calendar is white, you don't know what you're supposed to do at that time. You can do any of those things, and you can't be mad at yourself if you're not, doing the most important thing at there. So that's why it's critical to actually put that time in your calendar.
That was what Boris just said. One of those lines was the money shot right there. That it's not about how many things you did that day. It's, did you achieve the highest priority? If you spent all of your time achieving the highest priority task on your list, that is a job well done. Oh, but I only got one thing done. Yes, the most important thing. What would be the alternative? Apparently, like, either that means it needed 8 hours, let's say, 8 hours, right? Either it needed 8 hours to be done, or let's say the other one would be you're slow. Oh, I could be more efficient. You're probably not. We're going to assume that you're not an idiot and you didn't just stretch it out for 8 hours, right? Let's assume that thing actually took 8 hours. That's just how, that's the most important thing you need to do. And you devoted time to doing it. Now, what would be the alternative? Oh, I did half of that and half of something else. And they got all these half done things. I half did the third highest priority, but I still didn't get to the highest priority. If you can achieve the highest priority thing that day, that one thing, that is your win. As long as you didn't take 1 hour and stretch it out to 8 hours, I admit that's not good. Go back to inputs. Just to circle back to that a little bit, that idea. I think I get the cake metaphor, that if I'm thinking about making a cake, sure, I've got to get the I don't just think I'm making a cake. We instinctively go to, I need some ingredients, probably need a recipe and some time as well. So I need to think about what are the inputs for the thing that I'm doing that day. And you kind of spoke that it's usually attention and time. Or what are the inputs? Drill down into what you meant by inputs for a knowledge worker's task.
So this is what we mean by controlling your attention or by focusing, is that it's time when you're focusing on one single task. You're not doing things here and there, focusing on different things, multitasking. It's not real. You need to be doing one thing. So that means that you're controlling the thing that you can control, is that are you there doing the task that you said you wanted to do? So the input, the only thing that you can control is that did I come and sit down and focus on this one thing for as long as I wanted to do that. And if you do that, you're successful. Not if you finish the task, but if you spent that time that you allocated to that. So your definition of success changes, and you focus more on the discipline, on the process of that, instead of the result. You don't think of it as the I need to get this thing done today, but I need to put the input 1 hour, 2 hours on this task, and then you'll see that you actually progressed. And you've heard of the planning fallacy, you probably heard of it, that on average it takes people around 3 times more to complete a task than what they originally planned. And so most people use to-do lists because that's an easy way to organize your tasks. But if you start time boxing, you realize that you become a lot better at planning. Because, for example, let's say you want to make a presentation for, you need 10 slides, and you put on your calendar, okay, from 9 to 10, I'll be writing these presentation slides. And you'll see that in 1 hour, you got 2 slides done. So and you didn't do other things at the same time. You focus on that task. So that means, okay, I'm going to need 4 more of these, 4 more hours throughout the week to get this done. So you become a lot better at like being thoughtful and achieving your goals.
I like that. That reminds me of what we were talking about before. I said that I'd been influenced when trying to manage salespeople. And I read a book about how to manage salespeople. And it said when trying to set a goal for a salesperson, don't set an outcome as the goal. Oh, we're going to generate 100,000 of income this month. That's not a good goal. A good goal for a salesperson is I'm going to make 100 phone calls a day. I'm going to make 100 calls, emails, I'm going to set up, I guess I'm going to reach out to so many customers. Make the goal related to the direct action that they take. I cannot necessarily guarantee that we're going to bring in 100,000 this month, but I can guarantee that I'm going to make 100 calls a day, send 50 emails, go and visit. This month, I'm going to visit 5 conferences. So it sounds like a very similar idea. Don't set my goal as, I'm going to do that thing today. Just set it, I'm going to devote those hours to this task. I am going to give 2 hours to my highest priority. And then I might have a little breather and sit and think like, did I get 2 slides in? Have I got all the way in? I'm not going to achieve the task, but I'm going to give the task 2 hours of my time today. And let's see how far I went with it.
Yeah, because you can't actually guarantee the result of the sale. You can't control the output. You don't know what the customer is going to say. You don't know what their needs are. But what you can guarantee is that you're going to do calls every day for an hour or 2. Yeah. And then at the end of the week, you'll be proud that you did it. At the end of the week, it doesn't matter if you did the sale or not. It matters if you do the things consistently enough, that the results will come.
Sure. And if you're not getting sales, right on, then you've got to readjust those tasks. I'm emailing the wrong people. Yeah. I'm doing the wrong activity, right on. I just have to find a different direct activity that I'm doing, which is hopefully producing those sales down the line.
It's the same as if you can't sleep, for example, and you go to bed and you try to fall asleep, but you you just can't fall asleep. You can't control the fact that, oh, I'm going to just turn off now. But you can guarantee that you're going to be at 10 in the bed. Okay. So that's the input that we're talking about.
That makes sense. Yes, you can't guarantee you'll fall asleep, but you can guarantee that you're actually in bed. Mm-hmm. Now, the flip side from that is the couch is also a real good way to... But anyway, we see the point. We see the moral here behind that. I think, Boris, wow, thanks for a good conversation. I think we'll wrap it up here. Gone a bit over an hour 10 here. So any final... Well, thank you all for on the stream. We're going to be here answering your chats. If you want to write some questions in, we're going to get back to you. We're going to be right on here. As soon as we're done here, we're going to pull out the phones and start talking to you. Boris, do you have some final thoughts? How can people get in contact with you and your company?
Right here on LinkedIn. Just shoot me a DM or go to our website, Produktiivsusklubi.ee, and write us. I'm glad to hear your thoughts down in the comments and chat with you guys. We're also at the conferences around, so keep an eye out on the socials.
That's right. And you offer your services in Estonian and in English now, I understand.
Yeah, in English and Estonian and also in Russian if necessary. So
nice. So yes, also I'm Louis. I'm an instructor with Combat Ready. We help teams and individuals to lead better using practical training techniques. Thank you very much for watching this. You can also find me here. You can go to combatready.ee if you want to find out more information. We teach in English and Estonian and in Russian too, actually. I think we've got some Russian-speaking instructors, so we can help all of those. Thank you very much for your time today. Boris, thank you very much for coming to the studio with me. Appreciate that. And we'll see you in the chat.
See you.
Bye-bye.